once again to another Excel tutorial. Today we are going to be talking about the sequence function. The sequence function is one of Excel's most powerful but beginner-friendly function that you can use to create a list of numbers automatically. You don't need to type the numbers one by one, and it is good for numbering rows, days, months, columns, anything at all you want to number. This function will do just to it. Okay, so without wasting much time, let's dive into the sequence function and see how it works. So let's assume we want to number these products. Okay, we want to give numbering or IDs to these products. The idea that will come into your mind will be to number them like this: 1, 2, and then probably drag this way. It works, that's fine, it works. Or you may try to write these two numbers and then double click. It also works. But what if you have a large set of data? You have about 1 million rows that you need to number. Are you going to drag from the top to the last row? And that is going to be a lot of work and very hectic. And so that's where the sequence function comes to play. Okay, so let's see how it works. Now, the first thing you need to do, like we always do, is to key in the equal to sign and then type the name of the function, so sequence. So before we start, you could see that it has given us the definition over here that sequence returns a sequence of numbers. Okay, so what you specify is what it will give you. It will follow the sequence that you specify in the function, and then it will return the results. So let's dive into it. Now you can see the arguments at the bottom of the function. We have the rows, columns, start, and then the step. Now the rows mean you are trying to number the products downwards. Okay, so think of it that way, that the rows means you are numbering the products downwards, and then the columns mean you are numbering the products to spread across a number of columns. Okay, and then the start is where you want your numbering to start from. Where you want your numbering to start from. Do you want your numbering to start from 1 or 2 or 5 or any number at all? And then the step is how much you want your numbering to increase. Okay, so for example, if you want your numbering to increase by 2 each time, then the step will be 2. Okay, so let's see a practical example of how it works. Now, the column, the start, and the step are optional to use. You don't need to use them if you don't need it. So what you can do, or what you need to use, is the row. Okay, so like I said from the beginning, the rows numbers automatically downwards, right? So for example, let's say we choose the rows to be 10, and then we close our brackets, or we bring a closing parenthesis, and then we press enter. It will number downwards, like just like this. So you see, we didn't need the other 3 for the function to work. We just needed the row. However, in some situations, we may need the other arguments. We may need the other arguments, the column, the start, and the step. We may need it to help us expand on what we are doing. All right, so let's try using the other 3 arguments and see how it works. So equal to sequence. Then we know that the row is to number whatever you are numbering downwards. Okay, and then the columns, like I said, so let's choose a row number. So maybe we want to number downwards, maybe 10. And then how many columns do we want to spread this numbering across? So for example, we are in the column of D. So do we want to spread it across D, E, and F? So that will be what? 3, right? So 3. And then which number are we starting from? Do we want to start from 1? Do we want to start from 2? Or whatever number at all? So let's say we want to start from 5. So let's choose 5. And then we want to increase our number by 5 each time. 5 each time. So when we start from 5, the next number will be 10, 15, and that order, right? So we want to increase our number by 5 each time. So we choose 5 for the step, and then we close the function. You see, so now the function has spread across 3 columns, and then at each time it started from 5, and then at each time it is increasing by 5. So you could see 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and in that order. So let's say you want to change it to something else. Maybe let's say we want to now number up to 20 downwards. Let's spread it across 5 columns. Let's spread it, and then let's start from maybe 10, any number at all. We want to increase it by 10 each time. You see, press enter, then it will do the work for us. So that is how the sequence works, and it's easier this way. I think it's better this way to number something this way than to use the traditional way of dragging and then double clicking. All right, so how can we use this sequence formula in a real life data? A real life data. How can we use this formula or function to work efficiently? So I have this set of data here, and then the first thing I would want us to do is to number these products or these columns alphanumerically. So let's give a serial number that has alphabets and then numbers. Okay, so the first thing we do is to put in the equal to sign, and then I want my serial number to have these letters SN. Okay, but before you type that, because it's a text that you are trying to put in a function or a formula, you need to put it in 2 quotation marks like this. So in between the quotation marks, you put the letters that you want your ID or the serial number to have. Okay, now we are concatenating. When I say concatenating, we are trying to join the letters or the alphabet to numbers. So we use the ampersand. We use this. Then this is where our sequence formula comes to play. Okay, so we are joining these letters, the SN, to some numbers that we want to use as serial number. Okay, so we bring the sequence formula. Then we want to number up to, say, about 100 rows. So down, this is the downwards one. Then the column, we just want to number it across just one column. Okay, then let's start at, say, 1000, and then it should increase by 1 each time. Okay, so once we just press enter for this function or formula, you see it has just numbered our products for us considering the number that we chose. So we chose just 100 rows, so you see that the last number is 99, because it's starting from here. Because it's starting from 1000, when you count, you realize that it is 100. Okay, just here. So this is how the sequence function works. Is very great, and it makes you work in a very efficient manner. So this is one example of how you can use the sequence. You can use it for so many things. You can use it for so many things. So let's say I want to, and another good thing is anytime you change something in a function, it affects all the other serial numbers, right? Unlike the traditional way that you would have dragged and then you would have double clicked. That's, you have to drag all the time anytime you want to change something. So for example, I want to add a hyphen to the serial number we just created. I'll just come here and then put a hyphen here, and then you see it has affected all the other serial numbers. Okay. All right, so let's continue. Now let me prove something to you. Let me just take this function off. Okay, and then create. Okay, so there's an empty cell here or an empty row here. So let's say we wanted to number these the traditional way. Now, if you decide to highlight these two and then double click, when it gets to where the empty cell is, it will stop numbering. So let's say you have about 1 million rows with empty cells within them, and then you are using this method, or you are using the style of numbering serial numbers. When you do this and it gets to the empty cell, it will stop. That means you have to scroll down and then do another double click, and then when it gets to another empty cell, it will stop. That is going to take a lot of time if you have a large set of data. So it's good to use this if you are working with something like this, maybe a short or a simple small data. But if you have about 1 million rows or 1,000 rows, you don't need to use this. And even if you have to drag to the last row and the data is large, that is also another hectic work to do. So that's why the sequence function is the right function to use for something like this. Okay, let me just put back our function or formula, and then voila, we have it. We have it here. Okay, all right, so let me give you another example of how you can use the sequence function. So for example, you have this production date here. And then you want to deliver to these customers maybe 3 days interval or 5 days or 2 weeks intervals. Okay, you can use the sequence function together with another function to calculate the date or to determine the date of delivery for each of the customers without having to check your calendar or without having to manually determine the date from your head. So let's go into that example as well. Like I said, we want to determine the delivery dates using 2 weeks interval, 1 week interval for each client. So when we deliver to Bright Ventures, we want to deliver to global traders in 3 days, in 1 week, in 2 weeks, any interval you want to use at all. So the first thing to do, let me fill in the empty space I created here for that example, and then we continue. Okay, we have that now. So what we can do is to bring our sequence function, and then the rows, like I said from the beginning, the rows is the number you want to get downwards. Okay, so are you numbering 100 downwards and etc. This time around we want to use the number of customers as the rows because these customers have been entered downwards like that. Okay, now say we have about 2,000 customers. We can use another function to help us get the number of rows. We can use another function to help us get the number of rows without having to count these numbers one, one, one. Okay, so the name of the function is called count A. Count A. So sequence count A. Bring the count A function, and then we select, we want to count the number of customers that we have, and that will be the number of rows we want to number. I hope it's clear. So we use the count A to get the number of rows or the number of cells downwards that are not empty. That is what the count A does. So let's go and we select this one, and then we can use Control Shift and the downwards arrow or the down arrow or page down arrow key on our keyboard to select all the customers that we have. Okay, so we could have dragged, but like I said, if you have a large data set, you don't want to drag. So that's why we use the Control Shift and then the downwards arrow key. So when we close this, now this count A function is representing the arrow because it would count the number of arrows that we have. So let me just copy this function alone. Let me just copy this function alone and then put it here. Sorry. So that you see how it works. So this function alone, here is formatted as a date, so let me just change it to, okay. So this function alone counts the number of rows that we have. So that's 100. You see how it works? So that means when we put in the function into our sequence formula, the count A function into our sequence formula, it will count the number of rows for us. Okay, so in this case we know that it's 100, and then we want just one column. We don't want to spread it across other columns. We want just one column. And then where are we starting from? We are starting from this date. So you remember I said we want to deliver to these customers maybe in 1 week after delivery, after production. Okay, so maybe 1 week after production we are delivering to Bright Venture, and then the following week we will deliver to Global Traders, in that order. So the date will be our starting point. So we want to start from that date. So you see how broad you can use this sequence function. I'm sure by now you are thinking of other ways to use it. So the date will be our starting point. And then the step. Now, how many days do we want to use? Do we want to use 3 days interval or 1 week interval? So let's choose 1 week interval. So 1 week is 7 days, right? Then we close, we bring a closing bracket, we press enter. Then voila, it will fill the delivery date for all the clients or customers that we have. So when we deliver to Bright Ventures on 1st April, the next one we are delivering to, no, so this should be 4th January. The next one will be to deliver on the 11th January, and then 18th, 25th, then so on and so forth, using 7 days interval. So if you want to deliver to them maybe in 14 days interval, you just change it, and then it will change the dates for all the customers. Okay, so I hope this works, and I hope you are able to use the sequence function in your activities. Now you don't need to type numbers one by one again. You don't want to do the dragging when you have a lot of data. Okay, so thank you very much and hope to see you another time. And don't forget to follow my page or subscribe so that when I post a new video, you'll be the first person to get the notification. Thank you very much and enjoy the lesson. Bye.